Welcome to Hardcore Sci-Fi, where you join us on adventures among the stars. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss a single step of this journey. The sky over Kepler 92 stayed dark like an eternal dusk. Harlen and the kids had barely escaped the death trap in Episode 1, but they hadn't even caught their breath before facing an even greater danger. Ahead of them stretched a frozen ring of asteroids. A single mistake could grind their ship into metal dust. Fuel was running out, and behind them, the unseen eyes of the PAG were still hunting. In the shadow of a remote supply station, an old friend suddenly appeared. But was he here to help? Or to lure them into a trap? And what waits for them in the black ahead? If you want to know who's really behind the chase, and why Harlen is ready to risk everything, listen to Episode 2 all the way through, Deep Space. Faded Star Ring. Kepler 92. 612 Li. From Earth Kestrel 9 glided through the darkness, its hull mottled with faint starlight. Outside, the asteroid ring stretched like a colossal wall. The radar flashed red again and again, collision alarms pounding like a drum, shaking the cabin with a low, tense hum. Harlen stood in the cockpit, eyes locked on the screen. "Elin, rescan the course. We can't hit anything." Elin nodded, fingers flying across the console. "Trajectory's off by 3 degrees. At this speed, we've got 40 minutes before we hit the densest part." A rock streaked past the window, flaring bright before vanishing. Miko gasped, heart hammering. Bren pulled him close. "We're okay." "Not yet." Harlen glanced at the fuel gauge. The needle had sunk deep into the red. He drew a slow breath, voice low. "1 burn left. After that, we drift." A ripple of worried whispers spread through the cabin. Mara laid a hand on Harlen's shoulder. "If we run out here, we'll be trapped in the ring for days. They'll find us." "I know." Harlen's answer was curt, but his eyes swept across every child, counting the lives he had to keep alive. Suddenly, the comm screen flickered. A flat voice filled the cabin. "Emergency notice, Unit 47 has been flagged as high risk. All supply stations are denied refueling. Report immediately if sighted." Oren slammed a fist into the chair frame, the clang sharp and angry. "They just made us outlaws." Harlen forced the anger down, barked an order. "Cut all external channels. No transmissions. No pings." The radar flashed red again, this time a pursuit signal. Harlen leaned over the control yoke, jaw tight. "Hold steady. Thread the gap. Nobody panics." Harlen switched on the emergency channel. Static crackled through the cockpit, then a steady male voice came over the speakers. "Identity confirmed, Kestrel 9. Operator Harlen Mirek, Unit 47. Access denied under security protocol. Vacate orbit immediately. Listen to me." Harlen leaned close to the mic. "I've got 20 children from Camp 47 aboard. They need supplies. They need medical care. Open the gate for us." A heavy silence followed. The children's breathing filled the cabin. Then the controller's voice returned, cold and flat. "Unit 47 is on the high-risk list. Docking is prohibited." "This is your final warning." Mara clutched her head, breathing fast. "No, they're just going to leave the kids to die out here." Bren broke into tears, the sobs drowning out the radar ping. Miko buried his face in Bren's shoulder, trembling. Harlen slammed his palm against the console. "They're children, not criminals." His voice thundered through the cabin, making every child flinch. The controller replied, still reading the rulebook in that emotionless tone. "No exceptions. PAG patrol craft are inbound. Comply and vacate orbit." Oren gripped the chair rail, eyes locked on Harlen. "If we leave, they'll catch us in the ring." "I know." Harlen's reply was quiet, but his gaze had gone dark. The warning siren blared again, louder this time. On the screen, the red dot marking the PAG ship was growing fast. Mara looked at Harlen, desperate. "What do we do?" Harlen straightened, his voice sharp and final. "We're not leaving." "Lock every channel. Radio silence. If they won't open the gate, we'll open it ourselves." The cabin fell silent. Only the warning light kept turning, sweeping red across the children's faces. The decision was made. There was no going back. Then the radar changed pitch, the slow beeps turning into a rising wail. 3 more red dots appeared, forming an arc around their orbit. It wasn't just one PAG ship, a whole squadron was closing in. Harlen leaned toward the screen, narrowing his eyes. "Range, Elin swallowed hard. 20,000 kilometers and dropping. At this speed, they'll close the circle in under 10 minutes. Mara jumped to her feet, voice shaking. If they seal the whole port, we'll be pinned between them. Quiet. Harlen's voice dropped low, eyes never leaving the screen. The children held their breath. Only the deep hum of the engines and the sharp radar pings filled the cabin. Bren squeezed Miko's hand until his knuckles went white, as if afraid the boy might vanish. Harlen stepped toward the main console. The rotating red light cut across his face, carving deep lines in his expression. He stopped, looking at every child in turn. Oren, still by the door, met his gaze with a firm nod. The moment stretched, frozen in time. Then Harlen struck a command, and the display switched to the Freeport gate controls. We're opening it ourselves, Mara's breath caught. You're going to... No more begging. His tone cut her off like a blade. Elin blinked, hands shaking as she unlocked the remote interface. The Freeport schematic lit up, every security lock glowing red like open wounds. Harlen turned and gave orders. Oren, prep the lock chamber. Sarah, keep the kids close to the cargo bay. Mara, strap the little ones down. Outside, the PAG ships were close enough to show detail on the screen, fanning into a half circle. The siren screamed, rattling the hull. Harlen gripped the control yoke, voice deep and steady. From this moment on, we're not visitors. We're intruders. Hold fast! Kestrel 9 banked slightly, angling toward Freeport. The sealed gate loomed ahead, growing larger, like the jaws of some massive beast waiting to swallow them whole. Kestrel 9 slipped past the last stretch of the asteroid belt and dropped into a lower orbit. Outside, faint yellow lights appeared, the shadow of an unofficial supply station hanging in the void like a rusted block of metal suspended by wires. Its warning beacons blinked slow and sickly, throwing light over peeling paint and scarred hull plates. Harlen eased the control lever down. The auxiliary thrusters growled low, the landing hit hard enough to rattle the entire ship. Miko clung to Bren, eyes wide. When the landing gear struck the deck, the reek of old oil and ozone flooded in through the vents, sharp enough to sting their noses. Stay put. Harlen rose and buckled the sidearm at his hip. He glanced at the children. No one leaves this ship until I'm back. The hatch opened with a hiss, a wave of compressor heat washing over him. He stepped onto the rust-stained metal floor, boots ringing hollow. The jaundiced station light stretched his shadow into a long, thin streak behind him. A man emerged from the maintenance bay, coveralls smeared with oil. He froze, recognizing the face before him. Tomas. Harlen gave a short nod. Harlen Mirek. Tomas's tired grin twisted slightly. I heard you vanished. You and the kids both. Rumors travel faster than the truth. Harlen's handshake was brisk, almost curt. They walked toward the supply room, the overhead tube lights flickering as they passed. Thomas spoke as they walked. You realize you're standing in a gray zone, right? This station isn't under PAG protection. If anything goes wrong, good. Harlen cut him off. I need fuel and water, as fast as you can manage. Thomas met his eyes, then sighed. You haven't changed. One speed only, one straight ahead. Harlen said nothing. His gaze drifted to the ship's hatch, where the silhouettes of the children glowed against the cabin lights. Tomas lowered his voice, barely above a whisper. You shouldn't stay long. This place has eyes everywhere. I'll get you topped off. But you need to be ready to leave the second I signal. Harlen gave a single tight nod, his jaw set. Even here, in the middle of nowhere, Pag's shadow could still reach. The fuel pumps kicked on beneath the ship, thumping in a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Harlen stood near the hatch, eyes scanning the dark corners of the station. Inside, Mara and the children stayed quiet, but the air felt thick enough to choke. Aylin crouched over the auxiliary console, staring at a string of signals. Her brow furrowed. Uncle Harlen, a strange data packet just pinged our system. It's not from the station. Harlen strode over and looked at the screen. A red icon blinked, pulsing in slow, deliberate beats. His jaw tightened. Kill the uplink! Now! Elin's fingers flew over the keys. Working. But the packet's already out. Mara went pale. That means Yes. Harlan's answer was sharp. They know we're here. Outside, Thomas stepped back in, sweat dotting his forehead. I just saw a new guy in the maintenance bay. He left the station right after spotting your ship ID. Harlen shot him a look that landed like a weight. You're sure? I'm sure. And bad news. The exterior cameras started recording the second you landed. A sharp metallic click echoed from the deck. A narrow beam of light swept past the hatch window, sliding across the hull. Elin swallowed hard. That's an ID sweep. They just tagged us. Bren pressed closer to Mara, whispering, Are we about to get caught? No one catches us if we leave at the right time. Harlan's voice cut like steel. He turned to Thomas. How long until full? 5 minutes. Make it 3. If it's not done, cut it. The ship's alarms blared suddenly, lights flashing in staccato bursts. Harlen cursed under his breath and bolted for the main controls. Seal all hatches. Keep the kids away from the windows. Across the display, a new line of text appeared. Remote maintenance connection, authentication in progress. Harlen looked at Thomas, whose face had gone chalk white. They're opening a direct channel. The cabin fell utterly silent. Only the hiss of the vents could be heard. Harlen gripped the armrest, knuckles white. He knew exactly what would appear on the screen next, and that it would change everything. The main screen flared to life, washing the cabin in red light. Chief Derek Vell's face appeared, sharp and cold as a blade. His security uniform was spotless, almost inhumanly so, the PAG insignia glinting on his shoulder. Harlen Mirek. His voice was slow, heavy, each word like a hammer blow. You are docked at an unauthorized facility. The ship Kestrel 9 is under surveillance. Don't try to run. Harlen stood tall, one hand resting on the console. There are children on this ship. They've committed no crime. The quota lock list is never wrong, Darek replied, voice like ice. Unit 47 has been marked as unfit for survival. You are not authorized to leave this station. Mara tightened her grip on Bren's hand, holding the boy back from crying. Elin stared at the screen, her lip bitten until blood welled. Harlan's mouth curled into a humorless smile. If you plan to take us, why bother talking first? Because I want you to know the station gates are locked. My ships are closing the circle. Surrender now and I'll take the children back to the habitation center. As for you, Darek paused, his eyes flashing a hint of threat. You will stand trial for theft of colonial property. The cabin felt choked, the fans roaring like a storm. Cut the feed, Harlen snapped. Elin hit the command and the screen went black. Thomas stepped forward, voice urgent. You can't fight PAG head on. They've got a fleet out there, which is why we can't let them take the kids back. Harlen spun around, eyes burning with resolve. He slammed the emergency switch. The cabin lights turned amber, the alarm howled. Mara, strap the children down. Harren, ready the lock chamber. Sarah, check the cargo seals. Outside, every light on the station turned crimson. A heavy clang reverberated through the hull. Freeport was sealed. Harlen pulled the auxiliary start lever, his voice low and rough but steady. We're leaving, now. Kestrel 9 shuddered as the engines roared to life. Red light swept across the window one last time, catching Harlan's tense face. He gripped the yoke tight, staring into the black void where the PAG ships waited. The maintenance bay lay silent, yellow station lights stretching greasy shadows across the walls. Harlen slammed the hatch shut behind him, the echo sharp as a hammer strike. Thomas stood by the table, sweat beading on his temple, watching his old friend approach with wary eyes. You know why I came back here, Harlen said, voice low, each word clipped. Someone tipped PAG off. They were here too fast. Thomas bit his lip, fingers drumming against the table's edge. Harlen, I didn't want to do it. Darek Vell sent men here. He threatened to cut the station's air supply if I didn't cooperate. I just planted a tracker. I never sent the exact coordinates. Metal groaned as Harlan's palm slammed the table. Mara stepped in, worry written across her face. Can we trust him? She asked. Oren stood at the door, grip tightening around a steel bar. If he sold us out, I can tie him up right now. Enough! Harlan's roar cut through the room. Silence fell like a curtain. He stared straight at Thomas, eyes boring into him. You get one last chance. If you're lying, no. Thomas's voice was raw, almost desperate. I swear it. I didn't sell you out. But that tracker, it's still on your ship. The air in the room turned heavy. Bren pressed against Mara, and Miko sucked his finger, eyes wide. Harlen turned away, fists clenched white. Fine, he said after a long breath. You'll take it off my ship. Tonight. Relief flickered over Thomas's face, but he didn't dare smile. There's a service tunnel that leads to the central bay, he said quickly. I'll show you. Harlen nodded once. If you betray us again? He left the threat unfinished, but the dull thud of his fist against the steel wall made the message clear. The group stepped into the dark corridor, boots striking hard on the metal deck. Harlen led the way, hand resting on the hilt of his blade. One thought pounded in his skull over and over. If this plan fails, they'll be hunted to the last. Night settled over the station, leaving only the wheeze of the air compressors breaking the silence. The red warning lights blinked in steady rhythm, painting bloody stripes across the corridor walls. Harlen pulled his coat tighter, hiding the faded uniform beneath, and gestured for Elin and Oren to follow. We take that tracker off before we leave, he whispered, his voice like steel. The passage to the central bay was narrow and damp, reeking of oil. Oren went first, carefully snapping a rusted latch. Elin stayed close, eyes fixed on the handheld console. Her fingers flew over the keys, a string of green code streaming across the screen. A soft click. The panel slid open. Inside, it was pitch black except for the faint glow of fuel lines running overhead. The air felt thick, the heat from the pumps vibrating underfoot. Harlen swept the room with a quick glance, then stopped. A small metal device was lodged deep into the pipework, blinking an eerie blue. That's it, Elin whispered. Harlen crouched, his calloused fingers twisting the locking ring. Oren held the light steady. Each turn gave a faint metallic squeal, as if the ship itself sensed the danger. Finally, the tracker came free and dropped to the deck with a hollow clatter. At that instant, the alarm screamed to life. Red lights strobed wildly, and the station shuddered with the blare of emergency sirens. Harlen's jaw clenched. He stuffed the device into his pocket and gave a single sharp nod. Move! They sprinted for the hull, just as a searchlight swept across their path. Bootsteps thundered closer. Harlen pressed his back to the wall, yanking Elin and Oren into the shadows. Their hearts hammered loud enough to drown the siren. A guard walked past, rifle slung low, his light beam sweeping just inches from their faces. Elin held her breath, a trembling hand clamped over her mouth. Oren's grip tightened around the metal pipe, ready to strike. The guard slowed, as if hearing something. Harlen gave the faintest shake of his head. Don't. The moment stretched forever. Then the guard snorted, turned away, and kept walking. His boots faded down the corridor. Go, Harlen breathed, barely more than air. They cut across a service passage and crawled into the ventilation shaft. The alarm still howled, red light slicing through the grate in pulses. Oren crawled first, shoulders straining as he dragged himself forward. Elin followed, her hair snagging on the edge of the frame until Harlen yanked her free, the metal clanging in protest. They dropped through the final hatch, hitting the cold deck hard, gasping for breath. Harlen stood first, eyes flashing with grim resolve. One down! If there are more... He let the words hang, hand tightening around the pocket that held the device, as if gripping the fate of them all. They returned to Kestrel 9, sweat and dust streaking their faces, clothes stained with rust. The hatch slammed shut behind them with a sound like a long sigh. Mara sank to the deck, back against the wall, eyes closed. At least, we're still breathing, she murmured. Elin didn't stop. She climbed straight to the console and started a full system sweep. Green scan lines rippled from bow to stern on the display. Harlen dropped into the co-pilot's seat, wiping sweat from his neck, still breathing hard. A sharp beep split the air. The screen flashed red. A blinking icon pulsed over the engine core. Elin leaned in, typing rapid commands. The image zoomed in, revealing a hidden beacon buried in the main drive housing. No way, she whispered. This one isn't from the station. It's been here the whole time. Mara shot upright, voice hoarse. Then someone's been tracking us since before we even got here? The cabin went heavy with silence. Harlen's gaze locked on Thomas. Who else could have put this here? Thomas froze, shoulders stiff. He pressed his lips together but said nothing. Oren stepped forward, fists balled. Say it! He snapped. Enough! Harlen raised a hand, cutting the tension. He drew a slow breath, eyes sweeping every anxious face in the cabin. If we don't pull this thing, they'll shut our engines down mid-flight next time. Elan's voice was quiet but steady. To remove it, we have to shut the entire drive offline. We can only do it in open space. Harlen leaned back, gripping the armrest, jaw tight. Then we cut the hull in the black. The second we clear this station. Miko peeked out from behind Bren, eyes wide. Is it dangerous? Yes, Harlen said, his tone like iron. But if we don't do it, there won't be a second chance. The final image froze with the cockpit bathed in dim red light, like an unblinking eye watching from outside. Harlen didn't look away, his face carved from stone. The dry, final tone of the refueling completion chime filled the cabin, clearing the way for launch, and for the surgery that might decide whether they lived or died in the cold void. Deep space lay silent, stars glittering like cold eyes. Kestrel 9 drifted in the dark orbit, main engines offline to hide their trail. Inside, the lights glowed dim red, stretching Harlen's and the children's shadows long against the bulkheads. The air felt so tight it might shatter. Harlen locked his EVA helmet, his voice steady over comms. Everyone copy? We've got exactly 40 minutes before Sentinel-12 gets here. Oren tightened the safety lines, metal clips clicking into place. Elan clutched the handheld console, its green glow painting her tense face. Mara held Miko back in the cabin, kissed his forehead once, then sealed the isolation door. The engine bay hissed as it opened, thin air spilling into the void, droplets of oil floating like tiny stars. Harlen led the way, pulling himself hand over hand along the grips, his body turning weightlessly with each push. Outside, the hull gleamed with scattered starlight, a silent ghost adrift in black space. Elan's voice crackled through, urgent. 2 cross-linked lines. Cut the wrong one and the drive will fry. Harlen paused, eyes narrowing at the glowing connection points. His voice dropped, calm and sure. Triple check before you cut. They all nodded. Their breathing was loud in the comms, heartbeats thudding in their ears. Oren opened the maintenance plate, a bolt drifting free in slow motion until Alan snatched it. Every movement felt dangerous, as though the slightest slip could rattle the entire ship apart. From the cockpit, Mara and Sarah watched on the cams, their hands gripping the seats tight. Steady pace, Harlen ordered. Alan, keep the readings live. Oren, right panel next, and stay clear of the power conduit. They worked in silence, the clicks of tools and the hiss of breath filling the comm channel. Harlen's shadow stretched across the hull like an old warrior performing surgery on the heart of his ship. When the last panel came free, Harlen scanned the bay. A sleek black device clung to the fuel line, lights pulsing faintly. That's it, he said coldly. We take it out tonight. He signaled the team to close ranks, bracing for the most dangerous step. In the cockpit, Mara clasped Miko's hands, whispering a prayer. Outside, Harlen drew a long breath, the stars reflected in his eyes, calm before the storm. The bay trembled as Oren turned the final latch. A sharp crack rang through the plating, and a thin seam hissed open. Air screamed into the void, shrill and cutting. Harlen's helmet lights flashed red. Pressure warning! Damn it, it's jammed! Oren tried to hold the panel, but the escaping air shook it violently. Inside the cockpit, Bren had been holding the auxiliary tether. The sudden rush yanked him out of the seat, his small body sliding toward the open bay. Mara's scream tore through the comm. Harlen kicked off the strut and launched himself like a spear. He caught the trailing safety line, one hand clamping around Bren's harness. Pain ripped through his shoulder, but he didn't let go. Hold that line! He roared through the comm. Miko's voice came sharp and shaking. Don't let go! Pull him back! Harlen gritted his teeth, hauling Bren in inch by inch until he could pin the boy against his chest and lock the harness clip. Pressure kept dropping, the alarm thudding like war drums. Elin! Emergency valve, now! The clatter of keys echoed. A final hiss of air vented, then silence. The red lights switched to amber, reading stable pressure. For a moment, the entire ship went still, except for the ragged sound of their breathing. Bren trembled, eyes wide. Harlen set a gloved hand on his shoulder, voice firm but calm. "It's over. Next time, check the tether before you sit." Oren's voice was shaky. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Harlen didn't scold. He held Oren's gaze through the helmet visor. "Mistakes don't happen twice. From now on, every step, every check, no shortcuts." Oren nodded hard, pulling in a deep breath, steadier this time. From the cockpit, Sarah exhaled in relief, the tightness leaving her face. The group's breathing slowed, sinking again. Harlen gestured for them to continue. This time, Ellen verified every reading before giving the go-ahead. Oren locked the safety latch and never looked away. Their movements were precise now, sharp and controlled. The device was finally exposed, its protective casing stripped away. Harlen stared at it, eyes like steel. "We're almost done. This time, no mistakes." Deep space was silent, only the distant stars shining like watchful eyes. Kestrel 9 drifted in the black, main engines shut down to erase their trail. Inside, the lights glowed dim crimson, casting Harlen's and the children's shadows long across the walls. The air was thick enough to feel like it might crack. Harlen locked the EVA helmet, his voice steady over comms. "Copy this. We have exactly 40 minutes before Sentinel-12 gets here." Oren checked the safety lines, the metal clips clicking sharp. Elin clutched the handheld console, its glow painting her pale, focused face. Mara held Miko close in the cabin, kissed his forehead, then sealed the bulkhead. The engine bay hissed open, thin air rushing out and carrying droplets of oil that floated like stars. Harlen led the way, pulling along the handholds, his body spinning slow under inertia. Outside, the hull glittered with starlight, a silent ghost against the void. Elin's voice cracked in fast, urgent. "2 crosslinks in the main circuit. Cut the wrong one, we lose the drive for good." Harlen paused, studying the glowing junction points. His voice dropped, calm and precise. "Triple check before you cut." Everyone nodded. Breathing echoed loud through the comms, hearts thudding against their ribs. Oren opened the maintenance hatch, a loose bolt drifting away until Elin caught it midair. Every movement felt too loud, as though the ship itself was holding its breath. From the cockpit, Mara and Sarah watched on the monitors, hands white-knuckled on the seats. "Elin, keep the readings steady." "Oren, right side panel next. Stay off the main conduit," Harlen ordered. The only sounds were the click of tools and the rasp of breath in helmets. Harlen's shadow stretched across the hull, like an old warrior dissecting the heart of his ship. When the last panel came free, Harlen swept his gaze across the open bay. A black device clung to the fuel line, lights pulsing faintly. "That's it," he said coldly. "We take it out tonight." He gestured for the team to tighten formation, bracing for the dangerous part. In the cockpit, Mara gripped Miko's hands and whispered like a prayer. Outside, Harlen's breath fogged the visor for an instant, starlight flashing in his eyes, calm before the storm. Elin drew a deep breath, her hand shaking slightly as she clipped the cutter to the main lead. 3, 2, 1. A blue arc flashed in the dark, hissing sharp. Then the device went dead, the pulsing lights vanished. The engine bay fell into eerie silence. "It's done!" Elin gasped, sweat fogging her visor. Harlen nodded. He clamped the dead tracker in his glove and hurled it out into the void. It tumbled slowly, spinning until it was just a dark speck swallowed by space. The moment hung still. Only their ragged breathing filled the channel. Bren clung to his safety line, Miko still gripping Harlen's suit. Oren gave Aelin's shoulder a quick pat, a faint smile breaking through for the first time. "Good work, engineer." Harlen was about to signal retreat when the HUD blazed in his helmet. A long, rising tone screamed through every channel. A red message burned on the screen. "PAG alert. Sentinel-12 ETA. 15 or Sarah's voice cut in over the master channel. "They've locked our coordinates." The emergency lights in the cabin strobed wildly. Harlen's face darkened under the flashing red. His eyes darted to the countdown clock. Every tick felt like a hammer blow. 15 minutes, he said, voice low and final. Prepare for jump now. Oren swallowed hard, arming the ignition safeties. Elan's hands flew over the keys, launching the emergency sequence. Miko dragged Bren deep into his seat, pulling the harness tight. The system's heavy voice intoned step by step. Pre-burn sequence. Engaged. Core sync in T-minus 120 seconds. Through the viewport, a distant flash lit up, the telltale flare of Sentinel-12 dropping into local space. Mara drew a sharp breath, fear flickering in her eyes. If they lock the jump gate, Harlen cut her off, voice like iron. Then we'll never leave this system. That will not happen. He gripped the armrest. Eyes locked on the clock. The camera seemed to freeze in that moment, red lights pulsing, sweat running down Harlen's temple, the Kestrel 9's engines starting to growl. The audience could feel it. What came next would be a race for survival before the net closed around them. Deep Space, 0317. Ship time Kestrel 9 roared into the system's outer orbit. The sky ahead black as ink. On the nav screen, the gravity curve appeared, a pale spiral leading into the dark. The cockpit lights flashed amber, alarms pulsing like a heartbeat. Harlen stood behind the pilot's seat, hand gripping the frame. This is the gravity well of Dead World S9. Once we're in, there's no turning back. We escape Sentinel-12, or we get crushed. Sarah checked the grav readouts, sweat sliding down her temple. Pull's increasing. If we miss the trajectory, no other choice, Harlen said, eyes locked on the path ahead. The ship began to shudder as it skimmed the gravity edge, the hull groaning under strain. Bren clutched Miko, both boys curled tight in their harnesses. Mara braced herself, voice calm but taut. Hold on tight. Inertia could throw us out of the seats. A long hiss echoed through the cabin, air pressure popping in their ears. Eileen leaned in close to the monitor, voice steady as she read off data. Engine temps holding. Speed nominal. Still under safe threshold. Trim nose thrust 3%, Harlen ordered. Oren, prep auxiliary vents. Adjust trajectory on my mark. The sudden yaw threw the ship right, safety belts groaning as the kids cried out. Harlen pressed down on Sarah's shoulder, keeping her steady on the controls. Outside, a cloud of asteroid dust tore across the viewport, streaking like tracer fire. We're inside the center band, Elin reported, breath quick. Distance to exit vector, 32 kilometers. Hold course. 1 degree off and we'll be trapped here forever. The engines roared louder, the whole ship vibrating like a war drum. It felt like a giant hand was pulling them toward the bottom of the well. Sarah's jaw clenched. Once we're through, Sentinel-12 won't dare follow us. Harlen's gaze stayed fixed on the black void ahead, where even the stars had vanished. Hold steady, he said, voice like a vow. No one is taking us again. The alarms pounded through the ship in relentless waves. Red lights strobed, casting jagged shadows with every shudder. Kestrel 9 groaned like a trapped beast, the hull lurching left. Hold course! Harlen shouted over the roar. Sarah, stabilize now. Sarah hauled the yoke, her hands shaking under crushing G-force. Sweat sprayed off her face as she fought the controls. Oren lunged for the auxiliary panel, twisting the pressure release. The sharp clang of metal rang out. Then a crack split the air. A section of hull plating tore free, spinning end over end across the bow before slamming into the view shield and tumbling away into space. Miko screamed, the sound breaking through every channel. Bren wrapped his arms around him, shielding his eyes. Mara leaned over them, snapping their harness locks tighter, her voice fierce over the wail of alarms. Stay calm! No one unbuckles! Aylin's voice cut in, high and sharp. Pressure dropping in aft section. One more leak and we lose the air. Harlen slammed the emergency latch, his voice like a blade. Oren, shut that valve. Sarah, hold nose angle -3. No drift. The ship rattled as the valve closed, then the shriek of escaping air stopped. Sudden silence fell over the cabin, heavy as a weight. Miko sobbed softly, Bren rubbing his back to soothe him. Harlen straightened, breathing hard, eyes scanning the panels. Stabilized. For now. Elin reported, voice still trembling. But we only get one more course correction before we lose the escape window. Harlen's voice dropped, low and unyielding. Do it again. This time, no mistakes. Oren tightened his helmet straps, nodded hard, and reset at his station. Sarah took a long breath, easing the yoke 1 millimeter at a time. Beneath their feet, Kestrel 9 shuddered, then slowly leveled out. Breathing filled the cabin, fast. Ragged, then stopped as the nav screen flashed green. Orbit path stable again. Harlen exhaled long, his shirt clinging with sweat. We're not clear yet. Get ready for the final push. The red light still pulsed, but now every face was set with grim determination, not fear. Kestrel 9 dove into the heart of the vortex, engines howling in a long rising cry. Space opened wide ahead. Kestrel 9 broke free of the gravity well, the hull shivering once before falling silent. The alarms went dead, leaving only the sound of ragged breathing. Miko buried his face against Bren's chest, shoulders shaking. Sarah released the yoke, her hand still ghost-pale. Harlen sagged into the seat, sweat running down his temple. He let the quiet stretch, waiting for everyone to catch their breath. It's over, he said at last, his voice barely above a whisper. We're through. No one spoke. Only heartbeats and the hum of the fans filled the cabin. Elin bent over the console, fingers flying as she ran one last diagnostic sweep. Green scan lines swept the length of the ship, then froze. A single red dot blinked in the engine core. Elin's breath hitched. No, there's another transmitter. This one's buried in the core. We can't pull it while the drive is running. Silence crushed the room. Mara turned toward Harlen, eyes wide. So they've known where we're going all along? Harlen's hand clenched the armrest until his knuckles turned white. He turned to Thomas, his stare sharp enough to cut. Who else could have put it there but you? Thomas said nothing, frozen in place. The cabin seemed to hold its breath. Sarah turned away, biting her lip. Bren shrank back, pulling Miko close. Harlen drew a long breath, his voice deep, stretching the air taut. If we don't cut it out, they'll kill our drive mid-jump next time. And next time, we won't get away. His eyes swept the room, stopping on every face, as if etching a silent vow into them. Outside the viewport, the stars glimmered cold. One lone star flickered, its reflection on the glass like a watching eye. Harlen straightened, tightening his harness, fingers gripping the yoke until his knuckles blanched. Prepare. We're cutting the core in open space. Kestrel 9 banked, auxiliary thrusters flaring blue against the dark. The ship turned toward the deep, into a sector with no civilian radar, no witnesses. The last image before the screen faded was a sky full of stars, blinking as if alive, a warning that the hunt was far from over. Kestrel 9 made it through the gravity well, but a shadow still follows. The second transmitter, their silent pursuer, is still lodged deep in the core. Harlen and the children aren't just running anymore. They have to find the one who betrayed them, before it's too late. If you've stayed with us to the end, thank you for riding this far. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because Episode 3 takes you to Freeport, where a trap is already waiting, and every choice may be the last chance they'll ever have at freedom.